Hello, this is John with Stock Strategy Circle, and we're going to talk about Nvidia from a technician's standpoint. I created the Stock Strategy Circle to help people learn how to trade. Members of my site receive trade alerts as I place trades in my live account. I really do trade. The alerts that I place are live trades that I've made in my account. I've placed Nvidia on our watch list, but I currently don't have a position. Now let's go to the chart. The first thing you're going to see at a glance is that on a daily chart, Nvidia has had a tremendous price rise, and it had very little volatility during that price rise. Now, volatility is the difference between the high and the low ranges during a trading day. And as you can see here early on in this chart, the ranges are very tight. As the price got higher, you can see that the range is slowly expanding. Expanding range tends to be indicative of distribution. You always want to begin your stock analysis by putting trend lines on. It's the easiest indicator to use. It's the clearest indicator to use. And part of this is more art than science. As you see, I'm playing around a little bit. But ideally, you're trying to look and see what actually has meaning for the stock. And so this line here, we were under it, we popped above it, we tested it, we took off, we came down, we tested it again. So it takes 2 points to establish a trend and 3 points confirm it. And this appears to be overall what Nvidia is doing. Now the next thing to consider is, have we made new highs recently? Let me zoom this in here. There was a tremendous expansion in range, and then the price closed down for that day. And since, Nvidia has not been able to close successfully at a new high. On this particular chart, there has really only been 2 buy points that I see that have taken place since that high. And we have 2 springs that have shown up. So I see that there was maybe 2 opportunities, maybe 3 opportunities in the last couple months to have picked up Nvidia at a bargain price. We have a spring here. And a spring is an area of price activity where you penetrate a previous low with substantial volatility. And then the very next bar, there's no follow through. So in this case, we penetrated the support line, we penetrated the lowest low from the previous week, and then the very next bar, price was up, and there has not been any activity really below this area since. Then we retested the trend line on the 6th of September, where essentially the same thing. We penetrated that weekly low, but then the very next day, the price started to go up again. And there's a third final one on a little bit shorter time period also on this chart. And this was September 18th. This was on a Wednesday. And as you can see, on the 18th, again, we penetrated the support for the week, but the very next day, price was up. These are bullish signals when taken together as a whole. Today, Nvidia has come down and it's touched the previous resistance and it has bounced off. If you were looking for a good entry point because you were overall bullish on Nvidia, today probably wouldn't be a bad time to do it. Let's take a look at a weekly chart and see if there's anything we can see there. Okay, so by adjusting our trade time to the weekly chart, you can see that the springs we pointed out are still prominent. This one here is really strong. This spring at the 100 level, very powerful on a weekly chart. If you were to trade this today, I would say you're looking at about $8 worth of risk, because if this chart fails to break out up here, then Nvidia has probably topped out for the time being. But if we get a close solid above this price line, then it's going to be off to the races. The difference between waiting until you get a close up here around 127 or buying right here is $7 a share. But with these previous spring activities, Just from the pure price action, again, we haven't looked at the volume, but just based on the pure price action, Nvidia looks really bullish. Okay, now we're going to turn on and we're going to look at some of the things that I typically look at when I am establishing a trade and see if there's any more information we can glean from this. So the springs are still there. They're still evident. The most prominent point of control on this stock is down around 48 a share. Then there was a consolidation around $90 a share. There hasn't been enough trading activity down there to establish this as a point of control, but we are above the peak. That is also bullish. Now when we come into, let's say, the last 3-4 months worth of trading, we're in this wide swath where there is a lot of churning activity taking place, and the real support for this activity is around 105 a share, which, as you can see, is more or less where those previous springs took place. If this stock were to remain bullish, I would say probably you want your stop loss down around 112. You know, if we get a close below that, that's going to be pretty bearish for Nvidia. But today, if you were looking for a quick trade with very low risk, you could buy Nvidia today and risk maybe $10 a share. One of the things that I like to look for is how a stock is acting in relation to its previous swing points. And so we had a swing point established last week. We closed above it, which would be a breakout signal. And now we've come back down to penetrate it, but it looks like we're going to close above it today. Old resistance tends to become new support. So if Nvidia remains strong through the day, this is probably going to be a decent buy point right here on it. If we turn the swings off and take a look at the on-balance volume, or price volume trend, I mean, you'll see that the price volume trend is actually bullish. And what do I mean by that? Well, here we had this huge penetration of price activity resulting in the spring, but we didn't get the same depth of penetration on the price volume trend line. That tends to indicate that there's actually less selling going on than you would think, and that this might just be an area of manipulation. And we come in again on this other dip, and we get a little bit more penetration relative to what took place, but it's still more or less stopped at the same spot. I'll tell you what would be a super bullish signal on Nvidia that would tell you that we're going to break out to the upside out of this consolidation pattern. And that would be if we got a price volume trend to close above this previous area right here, even if you don't get the price activity. So the attractiveness of Nvidia at this point is really going to depend on your time horizon. If we look at a weekly chart, we have huge swings in activity in this consolidation area. But the price volume trend is holding up, which means, at least as far as the weekly turnover goes, this consolidation area does not look like distribution. If this consolidation area was distribution, then this price volume trend line would be falling, and it's really not. It's actually moving sideways. However, the problem with that is that because the activity is so volatile, if you're trading it based on its weekly price action, you're going to be looking at hanging on to this thing until it closes below $88 a share. So from 88 to 120, that gives you, what, $30, almost $40 worth of risk in this one particular trade. Now, depending on your account size, you may not be able to take a position that is large enough in Nvidia to make much of a difference. However, if you trade it based on the daily chart, the price volume trend does not give you the same sort of signal. The signal is a little ambiguous. It's not really saying whether this is distribution or accumulation. However, having said that, you're only looking at risking maybe $10 a share if you were to trade this based on a daily chart. You could take a trade based on the 1 hour chart And on the 1 hour chart, your support level is going to be around 117.98, let's say 118. So now you have $2 worth of risk. But the 1 hour chart is not that bullish. In fact, the 1 hour chart is still showing some weakness. So if you were to buy it in here based on the 1 hour chart, you definitely would want to get out if it closes below 117.80.